We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our first plane talk, and I want to thank you for joining us today. And we have an intimate group. That's great for a first conversation. And considering the fact that we're talking about funding today, that I'm not surprised that this is a smaller group, because I'm happy to say that I feel that SBDC and the Office of Economic Development and Bent County Development Foundation, that all of these entities have really wrapped around our communities and made sure that everyone knows how to access funding and help them get to where they needed to go. So this is really a conversation today. And that's what that's what this is going to look like going forward. I believe in the fine art of conversation and connection, and that's where true collaboration comes from. So I want to welcome you. My name is Mickey Lewis-Gamici. I'm the Southeast Colorado Regional SBDC, or Small Business Development Center Director. And so I'll be your host this afternoon. What I'd love to do is go through the attendees that we have right now and have you introduce yourself and just give us a brief description, or not just a title, but a brief description of what you do, because I think sometimes our titles have a lot of acronyms and not everybody understands what that role is. So I think that that's going to be key in helping us really have a deeper conversation. So I'd love to start with Sammy.
Hello, my name is Sammy George. I know most of you on this call, but I am the Bent County Development Foundation Director, and I do economic development for all of Bent County.
Thanks, Sammy. Jaden?
Hi, I'm Jaden Yeomans. I am the Operations Administrator for the Southeast Colorado SBDC. So I do most of our informational newsletters, and I do a lot of consulting and program building as well.
Jaden is new to our team. So we also have Luis Ramirez, but he's not on today, and he's handling our social media and marketing. So you will get to meet him, trust me. Let's go to Douglas. Or Doug, I'm not sure how you say your name. And you'll need to, let's see if we can unmute you. There we go.
Can't hear him.
Can't hear him either, yeah. Oh well, we will come back. He may have something happening in the background that we don't know about. Edward or Ed, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm a city councilman for the city of Lanta, and I am very inquisitive about all the things going on in the city. And I'm in the downtown committee for revitalization. And I'm also on the utility board, and I get hammered with a lot of questions about the COVID crisis. So this will be an interesting topic. And when I saw it, I said, this is a must.
Oh, good, good.
It's so bad that we don't have more.
Well, I think that this is a time right now where a lot of entities are looking at building that kind of momentum, and I am perfectly happy to stand out front and get this started. I know that Sammy's been doing a good bit of this as well, and just getting that conversation and helping people connect, and then to help everyone connect the dots. So thank you so much. Ed, do you like to go by Edward or Ed?
Ed.
Okay, Ed it is.
That's what everybody calls me.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me, but I've been doing a lot of yard work today.
Oh, have you?
Cleaning up, freshening up. Found things in the shed, shed and garage. I didn't know I had that. I just bought one the other day.
It's a good day. It's not so hot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ed. Adrian, can you take yourself off mute, please, and then introduce yourself?
Hey, guys. My name's Adrian Hart. I've lived here my whole life. I've worked media my whole life. I've got my own media company now. I've been doing marketing consulting for a couple of years, selling ads for other companies. But yeah, you can look at my website, cconews.org, and kind of get the idea of what I've got going on. And yeah, I'm here to talk and hear about what's going on in my community. So again, thank you for doing this, Nikki and crew.
Thank you, Adrian. And Cheryl?
Hi, I too am glad you're doing this so we can all, share our perspectives and things that maybe we've figured out that someone else might not know. But I'm involved with the Small Business Development Center as business consultant. I also do Pryor's Economic Prosperity in Pryor's County and Baca County Economic Development. So.
Wonderful. And can you just give just a brief snapshot of like what that looks like? I mean, because I think they all fit together, but I want to help everyone else see how they fit together.
You mean as far as what I do? Yes,
because you wear many hats.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a life outside of this, and so that's all right. So on Tuesdays, I'm always in Baca County doing economic development. I do Pryor's County Economic Prosperity part-time. We had a director that was there a short period of time and left, and then I picked up some of those duties again. And then the Small Business Development Center is near and dear to my heart, and I really have a passion for helping small businesses. I used to own a small business. So Thursdays are devoted totally to small business. Well, I shouldn't say totally, but that's the day that I set aside for Small Business Development Center, as well as other days I make appointments with clients and at their convenience and have them come in and do the Small Business Development Center consulting. And Mickey, you're right, it all ties together. And I see Sammy at every meeting that I'm on. So economic development, small business development, consulting, it is one big umbrella. And so if you have passion like Sammy and I and the rest of you, then, it is an opportunity for us to help our business community as well as individual businesses. So is that what you were looking for?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. Because I know for myself, those of you who don't know, I'm new to Southeast Colorado. I'm not new to Colorado. I've been here in Colorado since '92, but Southeast Colorado, I've been here only 3 years. And then I'm a brand new regional director for SBDC. So I had almost 25 years in nonprofit programming development, in workforce development. But when I took this role on, I actually realized that I had never worked with an SBDC. And so coming into this role, that was something as a tried and true program developer and working with other people and helping them connect the dots for themselves. I was shocked that there was an entity that I hadn't worked with and that I really didn't know about. And then when that happens, you think to yourself, you start thinking about it in an introspective way that maybe there are other people who don't know what this is as well. And so this past year, and I'm at my 1 year mark, that this past year we have had seen a huge momentum of new clients, a resurgence of clients that we've had in the past, and then just a complete redirection and reboot of SBDC services in this region. And it's really been exciting and fun. I think Cheryl and I are tired, and I know that Jaden, coming on as an admin, that she certainly has her moments where I can see that I'm working her too much. There's just a lot to do, and we have 7 counties. And then COVID, all of a sudden I was on the phone with people from all across the region. And so I was hearing the commonalities, and I was also hearing the things that really flagged the differences in the different counties. And I think it's just as important to understand the differences as it is to find out the commonalities. So today our conversation is really about funding, and that is such a huge umbrella because there's grants, there's, as we had experienced, there were advances, then there's loans, and then there's loans that that it seems like this might be an SBA loan, but I'm not sure, and because it's coming through another agency in our region. And I didn't want to determine, and Jaden and I talk about this as well, we didn't want to determine what everyone wanted to talk about in this. So what I'd like to get from you guys, and we can really start anywhere, is what are the questions that are left? We'd like to believe that we've answered a lot of the questions with our newsletters and getting information out, and then collaborating in a really tight way with our economic development. But there's always somebody that's going to be missed, and there may be something that 5 people understand exactly what we're saying and 3 other people go, I don't get what this is. So I'm opening up the floor. Please feel free to take yourself off of mute, because I do want this to be a conversation. And what questions do you have left about funding as it pertains to COVID?
If I can start off, I'd like to see us put more money in our budgets concerning what we're doing for youth, because they are our future, and we really need to do better with giving them a recognition with regard to how much we value them more than we ever have. And the circumstances have dictated that, and we're actually caught with blinders on. And what can we do to make that more workable for the kids? And I'm talking about grade school on up through high school. So that was one thing that I was concerned about.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, Ed, because I know that if you look at especially the COVID funding that went out, there was really nothing to help youth programming. I mean, if you were a business and you sold products that youth might purchase, and then you had payroll, then you could get PPP, or you could apply for PPP, and you had a business, you could apply for EIDL, but it really, there were no categories. And I really, the word that you used is that I like most was prepare, because I feel as though we couldn't prepare for COVID, but now that we've gone through this experience, how unwise it would be to not start a platform of preparation and proactive decision making, because we know that things can happen now. We felt it. You know, we know something can happen and it can affect the whole nation. And for our communities, our smaller communities, I mean, I feel that in a lot of ways we've bounced back tremendously in ways that a lot of our urban areas have not. But having said that, we also know that we're not completely through this situation, and we don't know what the landscape's going to look like. So, and with our kids out of school, not knowing if they're going to return in the fall, that there is that potential to incur further losses with our youth. I mean, I think there's tons of conversation around public education and things that are happening in our systems, and then we have, right now we have 5. We're the first time in the history of workforce development that we have 5 generations in the workforce together. So we have a lot of things keeping us busy and distracting us and forcing us to multitask, which it just kind of continues to widen that gap for our kids. And so that really resonates with me, and what some of the things that we're looking at, that SBDC is looking at, and that many of us who are collaborating together throughout the region that is part of our discussion. How can we take something that is adult centric and then ensure that the kids are getting a piece of that? And I think that's something that we really, I don't think that our government at this point has gotten to the point where they're looking at it from, what about the kids? Looking at the small businesses and keeping the economics, but the kids are part of our economics and they're our future economics. So why wouldn't we start looking at that and maybe some of our funding streams, and even if we can do small things where I can take my small fund and put it with BCDF and put it with the city of La Junta, or with each economic development organization throughout the region, and then that's specific for that development, that further development for kids. Ed, what would you like to see as far as programming for kids? Do you have any specifics that kind of
Programming what?
Things that you would like to see for kids?
I would like to see some state legislation that would give the totality of the public health departments to be able to govern themselves by their own activity. For example, here at the Arkansas Valley Regional Medical Center, we
Yep.
have had 0 hospitalizations for this COVID. Yet businesses, I know of 2 businesses that are being very strapped for too much emphasis on detail for this COVID. And I'm not sure whether it's justified or not, but these guys have not come back from the governance, the overreach, they say, of government telling you, you can't give out silverware anymore. You have to give out plasticware. You have to, well, they've always cleaned tables.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of getting a salt and pepper shaker, they give you those little tinsy packets of salt and pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, and then people have to get their temperature taken when they go in the building. And I don't know that, I think the masks are okay, but there's too much regulation, and we should have, the tri-county area here able to govern ourselves as far as how much of this detail that we are wanting to put in to force to prevent a significant outbreak. So that's something that maybe we could look at, or our legislatures, for a change to, because this sales taxes are great, are the #1 thing for city operations. And they might be significant at Walmart and Safeway, but we need these other little businesses to keep going too. They've got to stay afloat. And if we don't have them, then what are folks going to do? They're going to go out of town. I don't know. I just think the state, what happens in Denver, it doesn't necessarily impact us down here in the southeast area.
This is a whole, just the whole concept of talking about regulation and how that is handled when you have a national pandemic or a national incident, whatever that may be.
Yeah, but it impacts our economic base.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hate.
Listen,
I was just going to jump in real quick. I think, with the new governor's orders as far as the protect your neighbor, that counties I think we will start seeing some of those restrictions released based on what the counties are able to apply for and be granted through that order. I know that the Bento Otero and I think Crowley, they went in on a variance earlier, and maybe that'll be something that we'll see the commissioners pursue again. And I think, what it's saying as far as the difference between Denver and our area, I agree with that. As far as the regulations, it doesn't make sense that we are as regulated as Denver might be. But I do think that there are some things starting to happen as far as the counties being able to apply for those protect your neighbor variances. And as far as like the youth programs, I would like to see the development and the continued development of programs like the internship program that Jennifer Nesselhuff operates, and programming that really focuses on the youth and teaching them how to become a part of the workforce productively. And even there's a lot of opportunities in high schools where youth can, I think it can be developed more where youth can get that work experience before they're expected to go off in college and be on their own. And I think that's, I know there's some programs that even Mickey and I are working on that I think will address those things. But obviously, I think more, to Ed's point, the more that can be focused on the youth isn't just for our future, but, the youth are, the ones that are going to, stay and be productive members of society, or they're going to leave and never come back because there's nothing here. So we need to address both of those issues. And I think that's a really great way to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for jumping in on that, Sammy. Does anyone else, we're taking notes, just so you know, and we are recording this session. I guess I should have said that at the beginning. And next time we're gonna look so that we can have everyone's, so you can see your own face, if you want to see your face. Because we are going to edit and then publish to YouTube, because we're going to have our own YouTube channel. I think we have very important things to say in this region, and I would like others outside this region to hear our voice, specifically when we're talking about things like, what would it look like if there was legislation that each county has the ability to make decisions based on what their statistics are showing, and then also and then programming for students, what that would look like. So just remember that when we do this in the future, if you don't want to be seen, that's okay. But and we are looking to edit like the really great conversations that come out of this. So we expect that this conversation will grow over time. Are there any other questions or thoughts about funding? Anything about EIDL or PPP that's confusing or that seems unclear?
Mickey, this is Cheryl. So the only one that is unclear to me is what that, under the CARES Act, it was Senate Bill 2222. I'm still not clear what that funded.
Senate Bill
20-222. And I don't know exactly what that funded. So that's a funding source that I haven't really got a clear answer on what that funds.
Jaden, we haven't sent anything out that talked about any of the bills. I know they just came out. They listed them today. I received some notices. I may have to get back to you on that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Email everyone, because I still have, I need to look through those. Even though you think at this point that we kind of know where we're going, there's still like changes happening on a daily basis. So that's a good question. And then what we'll do is we'll email the answer to everyone so that everyone has that answer. I apologize that I don't have that right off the top of my head, but we'll get
No, that's fine. I think this is Cheryl, the other thing that, because I'm a visual person and I really appreciate all of the newsletters and all the updates, but if sometime we could just put that in one document, simple, here's what, and here's the CARES Act, here's PPP, and then put the like some criteria so that whenever someone calls and said, I need help, then you know that they maybe fall under, under this particular funding. And, we've all been reading it and studying it. And I'll be honest, sometimes my head's spins because every day we get something new, right? And so I don't know if you get what I mean, but something a little more simple in a way that just kind of lists each of the funding sources. And
SBA.gov has a lot of that information, and I will find the other source that has that broken down the way you're looking for, and I'll send that to you as well.
And of course I use SBA.gov, but it's still not like a chart I could look at and say, here's, you know, and maybe that's not possible. Maybe I'm wanting something that's, but you know, like I said, I'm visual, and a lot of times we're getting so many calls a day that if we just had that simple guide, it would help us giving the right information to the right people.
And I think that what you're experiencing, of course, what you're experiencing is what everyone's feeling, even on the SBA level, is that things keep, they keep changing. And really what we're talking about are the regulations, because they keep discovering, it's kind of like planning an event, and when you're and only planning the event while the event's happening. And so someone goes, wait a minute, we forgot this piece. And then they add that in. So they're trying to be as responsive and quick as they can, which is wonderful that they're doing that. But on our end, what that looks like is new information, new information, new information, new information. Oh my gosh, everything changed. Oh, now it changed again. Wait a minute, I thought this was this on Friday and now it's this on Monday. And so to SBA's credit, and to SBDC on a state level, there was round the clock work going on during COVID, Office of Economic Development as well. Everybody was manning different tasks. And so we really got that sense of how fast everything was coming out. And then I think everyone hoped that once we were allowed to come out of our shell and start walking amongst the living again, that all of a sudden that things would kind of fall into categories. But what we're seeing is that's not necessarily the case. And then, of course, now we have an uptick in cases, which part of that means that we have more testing happening. So more testing means more cases. It doesn't mean that we didn't have a lot of cases before, but they were just going around undiagnosed. And then, of course, we still have individuals who they get sick and they think, you know, I've got an allergy, or this is my summer cold, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, that you tell yourself to just like get up and get going and get to work. And then other people are being infected with this still. So we don't, and I'm not I'm not a person who, I'm not an alarmist. I don't want everyone to feel stressed out, but I think that that's part of the underlying stress that's affecting how this information is coming down, is that they think they know, and then all of a sudden we have a Monday and all the cases skyrocket for some reason. And we already have Florida, Texas, and California are now in the process of closing back down again. But then on the other hand, New York, who was slow to act, is now, like they actually yesterday announced that they did not have any new cases. So that further complicates things, because it means that we're going to have some states that are going to need more money, and then we have other states that are going to stabilize and not, and then that changed the playing field as well. But I would say Jaden she spends so much time with the newsletter and all the information that's coming down and disseminating all of that. And there's so much, on a daily basis, that certainly if there's specific things that you're hearing or that you're running into that they're questions, if you let us know, we will find those answers for you and get them back to you. So that you can keep doing what you need to do. And because SBDC is a conduit, and I look at Office of Economic Development that way in certain capacities. We're conduits. We help connect all the details and help you create the right path for you. So falling back on our organization, and Cheryl, I realize you're a consultant for SBDC, but I also know the different hats that you're wearing, so you can lean on us at the main center to get specific questions answered. You can even send an email with someone's name, loop us in. We'll keep you looped in so that you're getting the answer at the same time. But then you can actually help more people that way. I don't know if that's a perfect tied up in a bow solution for it, but we'll certainly take that into consideration, especially with how we're going to move our newsletter away from being a long, long list of stuff down to the nitty gritty, almost that grid type. Here's what you need to know. If you need this, there we go here. If you need that, go there. So I really appreciate that feedback, because I know that that you and Cheryl, we haven't talked a whole lot during COVID. So I'm sure that there's a lot going on over in Prowers, Baca, and Kiowa. Any other thoughts or questions? Does everyone know that the idle advance is no longer, it's stopped? So if someone is applying for idle, which they can still do, they're just applying for a loan. There is not the option for the advance, at least at this point in time. If we see the country backsliding, and our businesses shutting down again, and we have to go back to a quarantine type situation, I think that could change again, but we're looking at this last potential round of funding, and what they're saying on a federal level is that they don't really have the money to do this again. So then what we're looking at is tax credits, just programming. I think that we're going to see programming skyrocket. Workforce development and small business development programming is going to skyrocket. And so there's going to be opportunities in that capacity. Kind of going back to what you were talking about, Ed, children's, programming for kids. I think we're going to see a huge uptick in that. And then of course they'll keep the loans because that actually has gone quite well. And then they're getting better at it with each day. Is there anything else anything that's been a roadblock for anyone beyond the fact that we've had so much information and it changes every day?
Mickey, I might speak up here a little bit. Not that it's necessarily been a roadblock for me in the sense of accessing funds, but I currently have a business relief grant that I received for the Benton County Development Foundation. I received funding and I turned it into a grant to then turn around and support my local communities. And I know that SECED in Lamar also has a COVID relief grant fund. And I would say a barrier that I'm experiencing is that I have funding available specifically for Benton County entities. And I'm not getting really good response as far as people applying for to have those funds distributed. And I don't, it's obviously kind of a marketing thing, which, pushing it out, and we've had newspaper articles, we've had information shared via, email and social media. And I think, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. There's the end of the spectrum as far as businesses need the funding and they're not being able to access it. But then there's also the other end of the spectrum of there is funding available, but whether it's due to hesitation or distrust or just confusion, there are not businesses accessing that fund. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum, I guess you would say. And I just want to kind of put it out there. I know Adrian and Ed, and I know Cheryl, you probably are more familiar with the SECED fund, but any ideas or tips or even just spreading the word that the funds are out there in some specific communities, and that, how do we really get the people and the businesses to respond to that and go after funding that's available.
Sammy, this is Cheryl. We had the fund in Baca County as well. And I think everything you said is true. I think that people are hesitant. And I don't know whether some of that it's pride or whatever, but, really, we've had to go out and almost beg people to fill out the application. And once they have that filled out, to get the documentation to support it has been a real issue, because we couldn't give them the funds until they gave us documentation. So there is something there that, people haven't applied for some of the things that they could have taken advantage of. And SECED's funds, I think she's pretty much at the end of that. So I think we've had, but it wasn't that people came in. You would think that the money would have been gone immediately, but that didn't happen. We really had to help people apply and give them encouragement. So.
Yeah, another issue there is what the government is requiring for you to prove that you're deserving of those COVID funds. They say you got to have this, you got to have that. Your employees got to have been so much, been employed for such a period of time. When you restart your business, you have to show particulars of how you're going to change it to keep that COVID out. And I think the thing to do is to try to sell the small business people on how it might be rigid, but it's all for the sake of, the cautionary things that people are not sure of, what they have to do to get this money. It's just like these 2 restaurants that I know of, all those details that I was talking about earlier. They're not going to do that. They just soon stay with the carry-out business. One business I know, that's all they're doing. They don't serve in-house no more, and they're doing fine. But it's the detail of what if Sammy gives me $50,000, what do I have to do to keep it without paying it all back or none of it back or whatever? That's the big unknown for them, and they fear that. So, and when they fear that, they just throw up their hands and say, we're going to stay like we are. We're making good.
So Ed, I understand that, but one of the things that I've seen through this as well, and probably Sammy and Mickey as they're working with people, is we need to help people with better business practices. So when they're asked to give, this is how much you paid in salary, or, all of those expenses, that we're doing a better job of training them in their business practices. So, that information is available. And I've came across several things that I probably don't want to talk about on here, that then I've had to help people with, they didn't have things in order in their business. I'm not saying everybody, and I get it. If, you're one-man show and you're trying to do it all, and then you're asked to give all this paperwork, it does seem overwhelming. But I think that might be the thing SBDC could sell in the future, is that's one of the services we provide, is helping you get your business in order so that, you're better prepared in the future.
Mickey has overwhelmed the public with her, if you need help, call me. The paper and the radio. I mean, if she can't do it, she'll refer you to Sammy or to Jaden or whoever. But, it's, the help is there. You just have to persuade the people that this is a grant or a loan or whatever, 1%. We want to help you get more familiar with it so that you have a comfort level. You don't feel so bad when you go back and restart your business.
Right.
And if you don't have it, then, next time, God forbid, something catastrophic like this, that dumps our economy, and it really has. That next time it happens, you'll feel more confident about it, or we may not get as much funding. Sammy was saying she went and got some money. She gets $300,000 and begs and pleads and so forth to get it, and then at the end of the year, the fiscal year, they'll say, "Well, how much did you spend?" "Oh, just 25,000." That's kind of embarrassing for her. But we have to do better on that. And not just your small business development center, the chambers. Oh, I'm sorry, you're also the chamber president too.
It's okay. It's okay. You're right. You're absolutely right.
The chambers, the city councils, even civic organizations, and collaborate with schools and teachers and the OJC and get something done that will give people a comfort level that they'll be fighting to get that money.
Well, as I'm listening to you talk, and having spent, like I said, 25 years working in nonprofit, it means I worked with grants, and I was writing grants, and I remember what it felt like the first time I looked at a grant, and it really doesn't seem to matter if it's a federal grant or if it's a local grant. The first thing you see is the paperwork and all the paperwork that you need to pull together, and quite honestly, that's intimidating. I was personally intimidated by it. It took me several years to really working side by side with someone else who really felt comfortable with grants and could say, okay, step one, you do this, step two, you do this, and this is how you work on this, and then you build this grant, and then you write your next grant based on the successes off of this grant, or your concept. So you're always building one on top of the other. And when it comes to a situation like this, where we're talking about the confusion within community, we have a disease, if I don't have kids, I definitely have family. So there's there's personal concerns, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my rent? What are my kids going to do? How, my sister, my brother, my uncle, and then I have a small business on top of that. And I hear that there's funding available, but I don't know where to begin. I don't want to open a proverbial, or feeling like I'm opening a proverbial can of worms. So I'm going to do all this work and fill all this paperwork out. Then I'm going to find out I didn't know how to do it right. And worse yet, I find out I just don't qualify for it anyway. So as I'm hearing that and processing it, I know that I've mentioned this to Sammy before and Jaden, I feel as though we probably, as far from the SBDC education side, and Sammy, BCDF and SBDC have been collaborating deeply on developing business education, small business education for our communities. But I think that we could do a workshop. I definitely know that I have the funding to pay for that. But that we could do a workshop where, and we probably would have to do some sort of a webinar experience, because we still are not allowed to be in groups larger than 10, I think, right now. But we could talk about strategies for applying for things. Like, how do you get your information together? How do you organize that? How do you put that on your application? How do you list out your questions, and who would you reach out to in order to talk with them about that? And I've got great resources because I've facilitated several grant and funding workshops just in teaching people how to apply. And quite frankly, we have less and less people who are highly experienced in grant applications. We have more people who are doing it for the first time. And then with COVID, it's just application. And so that would be worthwhile. I know that that's, it's a little bit tougher sometimes to do one-on-one, but I think if we do a webinar platform and then everyone is given resources, and we can certainly do a blend of like PDFs that you can print out if you have a printer, or packaging that you can come by and pick up. One of the things that we're rolling out soon, we're actually having people come by the office and pick up the materials so that we can do that face-to-face connection. And then they have those hard copies, and they're offered electronically, but you have something in front of you. And then you're learning how to use those tools. And I know that may sound very like basic, but I keep hearing this over and over again about the lack of applicants. But I know that there are people that still need money. I know there are businesses that still need money. And so that starts to tell me that there's something that people are afraid of. It's not a particular funding that they're afraid of, but or that they're confused by. And there's nothing like a packet to make someone feel inept. Even if you know that you're definitely applying, there is a moment where you sit there and the sweat beats up on your brow, and you go, oh gosh, do I have everything? What if I don't have this? So I think we can incorporate that into the rest of this year, because I think there's going to be a lot more of applying, and we certainly want to help our entities spend their money, because and as you said, and as we all know, those of us who deal with grants, if you don't spend it, then a lot of times you just return it and you do not get an opportunity again. But if you can spend all of that money effectively, then you've got a good chance of being able to reapply and being funded again for even more. And I think that even though we have smaller communities in our region, we still have great need. And we have great capacity to do more. So we do need those funds.
Yeah, the thing to instill in the business community is to try to get them to get the enthusiasm they had when they were determined to initialize their business and get it going, and it would be a success. But as time wavers on, they've lost that confidence when it comes to catastrophic events like these. They're reluctant to do it, but you try to tell them, well, why don't you have the same enthusiasm that you had when you set the business up? Because you always have people saying, oh, they'll never make it, or that product isn't any good, or whatever, and they're determined, and 10, 15 years later, they're still in business, regardless of what business it is. But somehow they get soft.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you say COVID has challenged our communities in ways like to look at things from a very different perspective? Like we've all been forced to look through things through a different set of glasses, through different lenses. And we're all being asked to look through it the same way. And there are similarities because we're all human beings, we're all communities, we all have businesses. But then there's those differences, like what I mentioned in the beginning. We have those differences, and sometimes those, the greater the voice, that's what gets heard. And then the softer voice, the listeners, aren't always heard. And I mean, that's not an easy task to undertake, because we're talking about an entire nation all at the same time. But I think that that having this conversation and the conversations that we plan, the different types of conversations we plan to have over the next ongoing every month, that we're hoping to increase the sound of our voice, the level of our voice, and that so that we are at the table. And that when people are looking, when our governing entities or our lenders or anyone who interacts with our communities from outside the region, that when they are doing research and trying to find out, you know, what's happening in Southeast Colorado, that we can be a part of making sure that our conversations are being heard, because we are very resilient and we do take care of our own, which is a real blessing living in the community. But sometimes I think that because we do that, we don't pass on what we had, what our challenge was, how we addressed it, what the successes and failures and all the lessons learned. We don't share that outside a lot of times. We're great, we're amazing listeners, and we are like sponges. We pick up all kinds of ideas and concepts from everywhere else and bring them into our region and immerse them into the structures that we build. But then I think we sometimes forget to go back, to be very purposeful and go back and say, here's what we did. You need to hear what we did, or you need to hear this is what's happening here. Or I agree, it looks like this for you, but here's what we're seeing where we are. And I don't think that it's not and when I say we fail to do that, I don't mean that we're failing. It's that we're so good at the bootstrap, you know, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get going and get it done, that that we forget that there are these other conversations that are continuously happening in other places, and someone needs to be there representing us, whether it's as a group or an individual or publishing, you know, like we want to publish these conversations each month, not because we're looking to get a whole bunch of likes and, you know, comments, but it's more that our voice is getting out there and it's very specific to different topics. So I don't know if that's really coming off of this past year and my experience as a new director in this region, and then finding myself at tables and being surprised over and over again that a lot of people don't really know what it looks like in Southeast Colorado.
Well, I didn't mean to sound negative or anything about those other businesses that just let it go and shut down or significantly reduce their service, but there's been more than not others that are still, that rejuvenated themselves from this and are doing very well or better than they were before. I know of some.
Adrian, you have been alarmingly quiet this entire time that we're talking. And I just haven't.
I'm concerned about you.
So I just, as a business.
Thank you for your concern.
You're doing a business startup.
Yeah.
So what, from your perspective as a business startup, and you started working on this before COVID, and then
Right.
COVID, and now you're still moving forward.
Right.
How do you feel about this conversation?
So Ed, I just had to redesign my whole launch. Basically, I had a $10,000 deal set up. Basically, what I was doing was I traded $10,000 in advertising on my new website to the Fox Theater for $10,000 worth of advertising before the movies. So the setup was that I would take 4 annual schedules and donate them to area high schools. So this is going back to what you were talking about, Ed, with trying to elevate our youth and give them a platform of communication equivalent to what our professional adults have, I guess. Maybe, I don't know if that was my summation of what you were talking about doing, but that's something I'm looking at doing. But with the movie theaters, we wanted to donate those 4 schedules. So we had Manzanola, Swink, and Crowley County, and we had 1 to go. And I had, you know, good prospects, but I hadn't approached the school, so we were going to offer 2. So anyways, then we would let the high school programs produce their 60-second commercials for the school district itself. And then on the bottom of there, we would mock up kind of like what I did in radio. We'd sell local businesses sponsorships on that space. So we'd run the local businesses logos on the bottom of the video ad produced by the high schools. And you know, draw the crowd over to my website where they could see like put it like a interactive high school yearbook for each school district, so that they would have like a very controlled, I don't want to call it social media, I'd rather call it media and society, educational experience instead of an entertainment experience. But that got wiped out because the movie theaters closed. And our local government, bless them, they tried very hard. They made a variance to include the movie theater and get him back open again. Only he's limited to 50% capacity. And the other thing is he has to maintain social distancing. So in order to do both of those things, there's no way he can have 50% capacity. So they want him to skip every row and then skip 3 seats between each different household on each row. So we know skipping half the seats means he's at half capacity, and then reduced from there. Not to mention that the box offices simply aren't releasing new feature films. And that's what's driving his business, as being one of the only for-profits left. Most of the other theaters are nonprofit community-ran organization like the Grand. So, you know, not only to see my business get crippled, but also not that my relationship got damaged, but my close relationship with another business in the community, to see him get crippled. And then I've been Zooming for, it's awkward to not see my face talking, guys. I'm silent and I give a thumbs up the whole time, and everyone says, thank you for your thumbs up. So it'll be nice to have everybody's face next time. But I've been Zooming for church. I've been Zooming for training webinars I did with small business development with Corey up out of the Pikes Peak, the CEO series, and that was awesome. So I've been able to utilize it to slow down and take time for the educational processes that I wasn't skipping them, but they were going to be more delayed than because of this situation. So like, I've also had access to funding that I normally would not. I got the EIDL loan, and it's a start making payments for a month on the payment. So, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I'm not afraid of that. So I think if we could communicate the terms on some of the loans, and the grant funds are grant funds. They aren't, you don't got to pay them back. You just have to be responsible enough to say, here's the paperwork and I did what I was supposed to do with it. And, I mean, getting to me, and I'm put up on my so
I think
I don't put it on your phone.
I think you're cutting out a little bit, so we're catching bits and pieces of what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
folks, I hate to say it, but I got to go. I have another city meeting at 4 o'clock. I got to do some prep for it. So this was good. And thank you for making this possible, Mickey. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. We did schedule it for a little bit longer than we knew that we would need it, and we weren't sure what the conversation would look like, and I think that it will vary from month to month. But I think because our group, we had a small group, and we've been inundated about talking about funds, that we could probably bring this to a close for today. And then please know that next month we're going to be talking about transit, so transportation across the region. So please pass the word. If anyone says, we're interested in getting connected with SBDC, they can certainly go to our website, www.southeast, spelled out, COSBDC.org. And they can sign up for the newsletter, and that'll get them access to all the programming that we have. They can also just pick up the phone and give us a call. I have to look because I always forget my landline. It's 719-384-6959. So that's 719-384-6959. And then we'll be uploading an edited version of this conversation to our website, and then also we are going to have it on a YouTube channel. So this will be the first one. Thank you for being part of the first one. Thank you for your great feedback and insights on things. And we are always, this is the first year we're going to do this, so if there's something that you feel is relevant or that isn't being talked about or not being talked about enough, or that needs to be broken down, let us know, because we're willing to adjust what we're planning for our next conversations, okay? Thank you, Cheryl Sanchez. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Sammy. And thank you, as always, Jaden, for all the work that you do and being part of today's conversation. And we definitely look forward to spending more time and seeing you at the table again with more conversations about what it looks like in Southeast Colorado on Plain Talk.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.